Santa Cruzan, I guess that's the actual word, we would reunite every year at the Fungus Fair. For those of you who've been around, both he and I have been associated with the Fungus Fair for a very long time. I'm not sure, Chris, is it at least 20 years that you've been speaking at the Fungus Fair?
Oh, it's more than that. I think it must have been the late 80s or
yeah,
or something like that. When did it start? What was the first years?
Oh, the first year was in the early 70s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
74. Well, yeah.
I came to Santa Cruz in 82, and I think I was participating in maybe 83, 84.
Okay, yeah, I started in 79, so been working on a fair of years. So anyway, take it away, Chris. Dr. Christopher Hobbs. Oh, yes. You know, I was going to talk about next month before we get a talk, but
talk about him, his books. He's a author.
I should let her introduce. You know, she's got all these ideas.
He's a famous person.
Right.
Christopher, I assume you'll tell us about all your books and things like that.
Well, I'm not going to go on about that too much. I'm only going to show my most current book here, which is if I can get this is kind of
hold it closer to your face because it's there it's got it.
So I'll see if I can get it tilted right here. So it's called Christopher Hobbs's guide. Better look at it. Medicinal Mushrooms, the Essential Guide, and it is available for pre-order right now. You can get a pretty hefty discount if you pre-order it. It's going to be released in about 4 to 5 weeks. So, and this really, they did such an amazing job on it. I can show you maybe a few of the pictures here. It's just loaded with gorgeous pictures, and it goes through just all aspects of medicinal mushrooms, how to identify them, also some toxic ones, most of the toxic ones. Big chapter on visionary mushrooms, psilocybin. And the unique feature of it is that I review all the clinical trials that have been done on mushrooms, including all the psilocybin trials for depression and anxiety and so forth. You've probably been reading about them in the news. And reishi, all the other medicinal species, turkey tails, I do review the clinical trials and summarize them so you can see how much scientific evidence is available for using these mushrooms for health and healing. And it took me about 1.5 years to write it, but it is just a beautiful book, and I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Chris, where do we pre-order that?
Pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Kmart, or not Kmart, but Costco. Wherever you go to buy books, there you can probably find it. So Barnes and Noble, wherever. And yeah, it's been delayed. It should have been out by now, but it's been delayed because of shipping problems from Asia. So now let me see. Let me get on to my the main topic of the evening here. If I can at least find my mouse here and share my screen. Here it is. And let me see, share screen. You have to tell me if it's working okay. Screen 2. Okay, and why have I got that? Let me see if I need that. Oh. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, now I have to go to full screen. Can you see it? Is it okay?
Looks good.
Okay, now to get my pointer here. Laser pointer. Okay, there we are. Can you see my pointer?
Yep.
Okay, good. Excellent. Well, tonight it's my pleasure, and thanks so much to Phil and all the other members for inviting me to speak with you tonight. And I'm always just totally excited to talk about mushrooms. and their healing qualities. Here's a picture of my new book, closer up. And I want to mention that I sent an email to Phil this evening with a link to this PowerPoint. So I do give some resources. There's some tables and charts you might be interested in. So if you want to review this show at all, then he's got a link to it. And you can simply click the link and go to the PowerPoint and play the PowerPoint at your leisure.
I'll go ahead and forward that to the Google group.
Okay.
Okay. You can even post it in the chat if you want to.
If I know
Okay.
how to do that.
Yeah. If whoever's taking care of that, that would be nice. So just to start out, of course, I'm not saying anything new here. I'm speaking to the choir. But a few things that I love about fungi, and then I'm going to mention that besides all these wonderful things of getting out in the forest and hunting mushrooms, all the wonderful feelings and sharing with friends. I didn't even put that in here, or maybe I did. But I love, well, yeah, I did. I love going out with friends, and I love going out alone to get some forest bathing. And then cooking them, but there's even more than that. So that's why I put this up. But some of the things that I dearly love about hunting fungi or looking for fungi or loving fungi is certainly wandering through the woods and getting forest bathing. Did you know that there are quite a few clinical trials now on the health benefits of forest bathing? So that just means going out in the woods, out in the forest, and wandering in the forest and looking for mushrooms. And you're going to get healing just from being out there in the forest. So, and there are quite a few clinical trials even. I accessed them recently. So just being with friends or being outside, hearing the crows in the distance, splashing through the creeks with my great muck boots, and the smells and the wind in the trees, the sound, looking under the duff for mushrooms. It's my son who started hunting mushrooms when he was very young, loved looking for mushrooms and picking them up and looking under them and seeing if there's any mushrooms under there. So that's always fun. Just seeing the swarms of turkey tail and stearium scattered on fallen logs, the shapes of the mushrooms, the colors, and then of course finding kings and queens and chanterelles and spring cocora. We had a big bloom up here in the Sierra of spring cocora and spring porcini, which was just fantastic. And of course, I found, well, not of course, but I was fortunate enough to find some Maitake this fall up on the North Coast. And then of cooking them so many different ways, and I'm going to present some recipes tonight. I'm sure you have your own favorite recipes, but it can't hurt to have a few more. And there's just so much more to hunting mushrooms and eating them. And so first I'm going to talk about some of the really incredible health benefits of mushrooms. First of all, they're not a high-fat food. The few fatty acids they have are actually healthful and important for our body's nutrition. Not much cholesterol, incredible mineral content, especially trace minerals, high in vitamins, especially B vitamins. Pleurotus and some other species are amazing protein sources, up to 30% or more protein, including all the amino acids. So that's, I mean, why so many cultures grow mushrooms? They are literally nearly a complete food and such a high protein source and minerals and other nutrition that you can see why they're just so widely grown and cultivated in Indonesia, many other continents and countries. They're a great slimming food. And some can really help regulate cholesterol. As we get older, we want to keep our cholesterol in good shape. So Shiitake, pleurotus, oyster mushroom, those are wonderful at lowering cholesterol. And one of the most important things is they are very high in fiber. We all need more fiber, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. I'm so keen on fiber, and as a practitioner, I'm a licensed acupuncturist, but I've had a clinical practice for a long time. I tell people that probably the single best thing that you can do for your health, especially as we get older, for protecting your cardiovascular system, preventing diabetes, keeping your insulin working properly, is just to get more fiber in your diet. So a few other things about mushrooms that are really good, and they can convert a lot of waste materials, biomass, to protein very efficiently. Again, a lot of protein, but the protein is twice as digestible that's found in most vegetables or even beans, up to 25% complete protein, up to 30 even. Also, I'm going to recommend a book to you if you haven't read it already, and that's Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. If you're interested in the fascinating world of what's going on underneath the forest floor, all the mycelium that is connecting the trees and helping with communication and the movement of resources. So the mycelium can actually move resources, sugars, and other things, minerals, around from tree to tree. When, say, one species of trees, like a conifers, in certain times of the year, in the summer, when all the broadleafs have their leaves on and they're blocking the sunlight, so the conifers may not be producing as much sugar. Well, then the broadleaf ones, the hardwoods, are actually sharing the sugars they're producing with the conifers. And then when the winter, when the broadleaves have lost their leaves and they can't produce much sugar, the conifers share back the sugars. So, and that's all happening through these mycelial networks. And that's what Merlin Sheldrake talks about in his book. It's just completely fascinating. It's a whole world, and he goes into lots of stories, lots of characters, talks about hunting morels, and it's just a fascinating book. So I would really recommend picking it up. And of course, you can get it on Audible, and Merlin reads it. He's a very good reader. So mushrooms also have pretty high phenolic content, which are powerful antioxidants. So that's another reason to eat mushrooms regularly. Now, the main medicinal substances are either triterpenes or beta-glucans, and beta-glucans are part of the cell walls of all fungi. They're interwoven with proteins and chitin and other polymers in the cell wall, which then protects the fungi, and it allows them, it's so tough, it allows them to penetrate wood and penetrate the soil without any damage. So part of that cell wall are the beta-glucans, which are incredibly powerful immunomodulators, and I'm going to talk more about that coming up. Now, just to run through some more specifics about what you're getting out of mushrooms. And here you're seeing pleurotus and matsutake, shiitake, the button mushroom, and you're seeing here how much cellulose, hemicellulose, and the total dietary fiber that is in these. And this is really, these numbers here are really impressive. So this is a high concentration of fiber percent on a dry weight basis. So you're talking some pleurotus are up to almost 50% dietary fiber. And again, we need a lot more dietary fiber. Just for comparison, if you're eating citrus, or you're eating beets, or here are some high sources of fiber down here, well, you can see that the mushrooms are higher than any of these typical dietary fiber sources. And now I want to talk a little bit about fiber and cardiovascular disease risk. We're all facing cardiovascular disease as we get older. It's still the leading cause of death. We want to protect our cardiovascular system, and mushrooms are one of the best ways to do that as we get older. So, you know, over 50, over 40, one of the best things we can do for our health, again, is to just get out in the woods, walk, exercise, and eat lots of mushrooms. So here's a meta-analysis that looked and reviewed 12 studies that met the criteria for their inclusion. And they had at least a 3-year follow-up. And they found a significantly lower risk of 9% was seen for both cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, for every additional 7 grams per day of total fiber consumed. So that's almost 10% lower risk with every 7 degrees of fiber consumed. And guess what what mushroom has 7 grams of fiber, and that's 3 medium shiitakes. So if you ate 3 medium shiitakes regularly, you might lower your risk of cardiovascular disease by almost 10%. That's not bad. And not only that, but we're just totally enjoying eating the mushrooms as well. Now here's a chart that's quite interesting. Here's the typical US diet, the amount of fiber that the average American gets, which is about 18 grams of fiber. Here you're seeing it down here. Here's the percentage of, or grams of fiber per day, I'm sorry. So they're typically getting around 18 grams a day. Now, what our government recommends is getting 25 grams per day, but we can't even get to, most people are not getting the recommended amount. And as you see, the more fiber that you get in your diet, the lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. And so if you get 45 grams of fiber in your diet, you're going to get a 38% reduction of risk. So that is incredibly significant, considering that most of us, especially as we get over 40 or 50, we're starting to have a plaque in our arteries. We're starting to develop atherosclerosis, possibly hypertension, and other issues with our cardiovascular system. Now, if you get a traditional diet, so if you were out in a place like East Finland, and I'm going to show you another chart in a minute. If you're in East Finland, they eat a traditional diet, a total traditional diet, and that includes a lot of mushrooms as well. They are going to get a 50% reduction in risk of cardiovascular disease. So that is incredibly significant. And here's an example of how to reach 50 grams of fiber per day. Beans, lentils, split peas, kidney beans, so chili, all of these things is going to add 16 grams of fiber to your diet per day. Again, mushrooms. If you eat a serving of mushrooms daily, you're going to get, again, that high amount, maybe 7 to 10 grams of fiber in your diet. Whole grains is going to give you 3 grams. Muesli or oats in the morning is going to give you oatmeal is 6 grams. A banana, 3 grams. Broccoli, almost 4 grams. 2 to 3 cups of salad, 3 grams. A cup of dark veggies, 4 grams. Nuts and seeds, 3 grams. A medium baked yam, 4 grams. And 1 apple or berries, 4 grams. So you can see it adds up. The more whole foods you're eating, the more fiber you get. But you can pick and choose from this list to try to get your fiber up, and it's going to not only help your cardiovascular system, but it's going to reduce your risk of diabetes, which is practically an epidemic in this country, and also your risk of cancer. And another thing is I'm going to talk about how to make mushroom powders from medicinal mushrooms like turkey tail or reishi. You can actually get up to 50% soluble and insoluble fiber. You can get up to 50 grams if you use these powders and add them to soups and so forth. And I'm going to talk about how to do that. So I might skip over some of these slides, but I want to mention that there are a number of ways that fiber can help protect your cardiovascular system, help reduce the potential of developing diabetes, and also cancer. There are a number of ways that they work. First of all, the fibers can help prevent absorption of fats. They can also prevent and stabilize the blood sugar and the lipids in the blood. So the more fiber you eat, the less lipids, and if we have a high fat diet, the less lipids are going to be absorbed and get into the blood. And also the blood glucose is going to be stabilized and less sugar is going to be taken up. Also gels. You may know if you've ever blended up some shiitake even or turkey tail, and you get this gel that comes out of the fruiting bodies. Try taking some turkey tail fruiting bodies and put it into a blender with a little water, blend it up, and you'll see that you'll get all this gel. So there's all these gels in the mushrooms, and that is actually filling you up and making you feel fuller and triggering satiety. In other words, it reduces your hunger, and that's going to help prevent weight gain. Also, the soluble fiber, there's a lot of soluble fiber, there's insoluble fiber in mushrooms, like chitin and so forth, but there's also a lot of soluble fiber. Some of the beta-glucans are soluble, and there are some alpha-glucans in there, non-starch alpha-glucans. Those are all very water-soluble, and and also available to bacteria. And so the bacteria are going to ferment those, and that is going to promote good bacteria in your gut, which has a lot of incredible benefits, such as modulating your immune system, strengthening your immune system, and providing short-chain fatty acids, which are food for your endothelial cells in your gut. So it's going to benefit your gut big time by eating more soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, which you're going to get out of mushrooms. Also, there are many potentially beneficial compounds in mushrooms, such as anthocyanins, flavonoids, sterols, and so forth, which can reduce inflammation in your body and can act as antioxidants, as you're seeing here. By the way, I do cite my sources many times here. And if you want to look at this PowerPoint again and you want to look up this study for any reason, just go to Google Scholar and type in this case, 3 Appleton, or however you pronounce that, and 2013, and then just enter the subject, which in this case is going to be mushrooms or fungi and cardiovascular disease, or fiber and cardiovascular disease. And that study will come up and you can read it. Here is a chart that shows how much benefit you're going to get for preventing colorectal cancer. You may know that colorectal cancer is one of the leading cancers that we have to deal with in our life in the population. And so here's a chart showing countries. They studied all of these different populations, for instance, in East Finland, in Greece, Crete, Slavonia, in the US here. They studied all these populations for 25 years. And they really took note of how much fiber these people were getting in their diet. And they found that here you can see what they studied were people that worked on the railroad in the US. They studied all these people that worked in the railroad. And here's the data point, UR, and it shows that their baseline dietary fiber intake was about 24 grams, so that's better than the average American, at least. But when you get up here here's Montenegro, here's Slavonia, but go on up to West Finland and Crete, and you're seeing that they're getting 44 grams of fiber in their diet. And so they're getting a 60% reduction risk for bowel cancer. That is incredibly significant. Traditional diet here in Greece, Corfu, which is an island in Greece, well known for their longevity. Some of the islands in Greece are some of the longest lived people on the planet. And you can see here that because they're eating a traditional diet, they're getting 58 grams of fiber, and they're getting 120% reduction in cancer risk, bowel cancer risk. So I can't stress enough how powerful mushrooms are in adding the fiber to our diet. Now, here's a chart showing, this is actually from my book, showing different mushrooms: oyster, shiitake, maitake, cloud ear, which I dearly love to eat, enoki, chanterelle, porcini. And here you're seeing the amount of protein that you can get from eating porcini, for instance. You're going to get around 30% protein in the cap of porcini. That is significant. So, you know, we love to eat porcini. If we eat a nice big portion of porcini, we're going to get a significant amount of protein. I don't know whether you know it or not, but typically as we age, we cannot digest protein as well as when we're younger. So it's recommended that we eat more protein over, say, 60 years of age. Under 60 years of age, the amount of protein we should eat is about 50 to 70 grams. And it's thought that when we get over 60, because we can't digest it and absorb it as well, you probably have noticed if you're over 50 or 60 that we start losing muscle mass. So whether, you know, even if we're doing the same amount of activity, we're going to lose some muscle mass because we're just not absorbing the protein that we need to build muscle. So literally, the government recommends eating about 70 to 80 grams per day of protein. I don't get that much, and I typically get around 50 to 60, I would guess, and I'm very active, but even then I have lost some muscle mass, I'm sure. I just happen to have a low protein diet, but I try to get as much as I can, and I do eat sardines and take protein powder, and I think that helps. But again, and the mushrooms that I consume regularly, which I have mushrooms, if not daily, at least 3 or 4 times per week. I'm eating porcini, I dry them. I'm eating certainly cloud ear. I'm eating maitake and lion's mane and shiitake. I'm getting an oyster. I'm getting all these mushrooms in my diet regularly. So that's a major source of protein. Also, we're getting some essential fatty acids. We're getting, and here is the dietary fiber that you can see here. These mushrooms are incredibly high in dietary fiber, higher than almost any other food. Here's magnesium, pretty high in magnesium, pretty high in iron. Mushrooms are very high in iron and copper, and they're off the charts in potassium. So here is the essential amino acid index. The higher the number, the more balanced it is and provides all of the necessary amino acids. Here's the biological value, which means how easily can we assimilate the protein from the mushroom. And you're seeing here 80%, 92%. So mushrooms the protein is there, but it's also incredibly well assimilated. Here is, well, I'm going to skip that one. So the biological conversion is also, like if you grow, we were talking about growing mushrooms to begin with. If you grow pleurotus on rice straw, for instance, you're going to get 100% conversion. All of that rice straw is going to convert to protein. So mushrooms are very efficient. Some mushrooms are very efficient at converting substrate biomass to usable protein. Here is a little more on the mineral content. You're seeing here the phosphorus is off the charts, potassium, iron is an incredible source of iron, which we wouldn't think of really. Zinc, very high, copper, very high. So you probably can tell that I'm pretty keen on adding mushrooms to my diet regularly, not only because I love eating them, but because I want to stay healthy. Here's B vitamins. Mushrooms, again, are a very good B vitamin source. Niacin, riboflavin, pantothenic acid, folic acid. Look how high the folic acid is. It's an incredible source of folic acid and B vitamins, second only to meat. And that lets you know that these are really high in B vitamins. So let's talk about the biological activity and the medicinal effects of mushrooms. Let's move on to that. All fungi and yeast have triple helix. That means the molecules form helices, and they're also three chains are wrapped around each other in the cell wall to provide a lot of flexibility to the cell wall and a lot of toughness to the cell wall. Now, the beta-glucans that are in the triple helix form are also bound strongly to a polymer called chitin. And chitin is in the same glucan polymer that is found in crab shells. So as you probably are aware, crab shells and arthropods have a very tough shell. Well, that's the same compound that's found in mushrooms that makes the cell wall very tough. And by the way, chitin is very unique to mushrooms, and it isn't in plants at all. And it also has immunologically stimulating activity. So one thing about mushrooms and accessing the medicinal qualities, they have to be heated. They have to be cooked. So I can say that there are many ways to cook mushrooms, as you're aware. One of the best ways to cook mushrooms, if you want to capture break down the cell wall and capture the immunological activity, is a pressure cooker. So you can break down even turkey tail or reishi fiber. You can break that down to usable food, if you will, even though you don't think of reishi as food, but you could actually cut up a reishi fruiting body. It's easier when it's fresh. Put it into a pressure cooker, put it on high, like an instant pot, cook it on high for maybe 15 minutes or a half an hour, let it cool down over another half hour or so, and it'll really break that fiber down and make it soluble so that we can add that to food and use it. And so again, some of these polypores are very, very high in soluble and insoluble fiber, and also immunological activity. So these beta-glucans and also chitin have a very complex immune activation in our body. They target receptor sites like dectin, toll-like receptors, other receptors, and they start this amazing immune cascade that spreads out into our body. And by the way, these beta-glucans, even though they're fairly large molecules, they're taken up in the gut by macrophages, which then take them to all part of the body, even the bone marrow. So these beta-glucans can travel inside the body to the bone marrow, to tumor tissue, to other organs, and activate our immune responses. It's pretty remarkable. And so many clinical studies and other types of studies worldwide have been performed on these beta-glucans. So they may act singly, but they work in a variety of membrane receptors. They get monocytes going, which kill bacteria and viruses and so forth. Macrophages, which integrate immune responses and can also engulf bacteria and other pathogens. Dendritic cells, which kind of modulate and coordinate immune activities. Natural killer cells, which can kill tumor tissue and also viruses. Neutrophils, T cells, which are really important for memory, for immune memory. And one set of research that's coming out shows that when we're using medicinal mushrooms, it can enhance our T cells' ability to remember pathogens like COVID. There are many studies now on COVID and how we gain long-term immunity from the COVID virus when we're exposed to it. We get long-term immunity because our T cells remember the spike protein and other proteins on the COVID virus particle. And if we're using medicinal mushrooms, that actually helps our body and activates our T cells to go out there and interact with these virus particles and remember them, so that in 6 months or a year, it is thought that this is one of our best long-term immune functions for responding to viruses, even like the COVID virus. B cells produce antibodies to the virus or to pathogens, and using mushrooms regularly can also activate your B cells and also stimulate your body to produce more B cells. So you're getting really quite an immune response here that's much more complicated than you would think at first glance. So here are some other ways as well, but let's move on to the next one. Now, how much beta-glucan are you getting when you eat wild mushrooms? That is a big question that we might ask. How much of this immune stimulation and benefit am I getting from the mushrooms that I'm eating? Well, here is a chart this comes out of my book. Here's a chart showing the button mushroom, shiitake, oyster, chanterelle, honey mushroom, porcini, turkey tail, maitake, and reishi, and wood ear. These are all mushrooms that I certainly use in my diet. And here is the amount that you're getting in the stalk and in the cap of the mushrooms. So you're seeing shiitake has about 20% beta-glucans. That's a lot. Here's oyster, 24%. Chanterelle, 24% almost. Honey mushroom, 33%. Porcini, 17%. You can see that turkey tail and reishi have the highest levels of beta-glucan immune stimulating compounds in any mushroom. And that's probably why they were selected out since ancient times in China and other cultures to be used for health benefits, for promoting health, longevity, good immune system, protection against pathogens. They were chosen, turkey tail and reishi. Those are the two most important medicinal mushrooms as far as how long they've been used in different cultures, and also how they're used and sought out today, and what products are out there in the marketplace. You'll see turkey tail and you'll see reishi, and you'll see other ones too, like shiitake. But you can see very clearly that wood ear, reishi, turkey tail, they're the highest in beta-glucans. So they have the strongest immune activity. Here's a chart showing how they work. I don't think I'm going to take the time now. You can look at it again. It just shows here are the beta-glucan particles. They go inside the gut wall, the intestinal wall here. They are taken up by macrophages and by these dendritic cells here. This tells you step by step how they work. And then once these macrophages and dendritic cells engulf the beta-glucans, they're activated, they're broken down and activated, and then they're shed by these two types of immune cells, and that activates cytokines, which are pro-inflammatory immune cells. They activate CR3 cells, natural killer cells, granulocytes, and other types of immune cells like T helper cells. So this kind of shows you, and then these cells attack tumor cells and tumor tissues. They attack, if we have a fungal infection, they would attack that, and so forth. So this chart kind of shows you step by step how these things actually work in our body. Here are the macrophages and granulocytes. Again, here are the beta-glucan particles. They're taken up, they're modified, they're engulfed, they're digested, and then you get beta-glucan fragments here, which are attached to granulocytes, these cells I talked about, and then those can target tumor cells directly here. pretty remarkable. So let's talk about what are they used for. Shiitake is often used for just weak immunity. And by the way, one of the most important points that I want to make tonight is that when our immune system has been weakened by, say, we have a chronic infection, say we have even like chronic bronchitis or something, or a chronic tooth infection, something like that. This really takes so much energy from our body because our immune system, if you can imagine how many immune cells are in our body trying to fight an infection, like a viral infection even. If we have chronic hepatitis C, for instance, we have a chronic viral infection. Our body has to make all of these cells. They have to do all this signaling. They have to produce cells that can go after the virus and keep them in check, like herpes, for instance, chronic herpes infection, which about 40% or to 50% of the population has. This takes a lot of energy. So it's really, if you feel fatigue, one of the ways to counteract that and to have more energy is to address any types of chronic infections that you might have and build up your immune system with medicinal mushrooms. So immune weakness, treating infections, shiitake has been used for that. Also turkey tails. Shiitake and turkey tails are the two best studied mushrooms for preventing cancer and also for treating cancer, along with chemo and radiation typically in the clinical trials. Viral syndromes, like if you have chronic hepatitis, herpes, or HIV even, medicinal mushrooms are very good for helping to support your immune response. Cordyceps has been used for many, many centuries for counteracting fatigue, for having higher performance as an adaptogen to help adapt to stress, and also as an anti-aging supplement. Reishi for insomnia, anxiety, nervous system disorders related to stress, and reishi for respiratory tract problems. Now, in every culture, considering all cultures that use mushrooms, about 270 species of mushrooms have been studied for their immunotherapeutic properties. In other words, they have beta-glucans, they have terpenes that can help in our body fight disease and maintain health. 50 non-toxic mushroom species have yielded immunoceuticals in vitro. So in other words, they've been studied for beta-glucans or other active compounds that can activate our immune response. 50 species have research on them. And 6 species have been studied in human cancers. Here are the top cultivated mushrooms, and I'm going to talk about because this is going to be also the rest of the talk is going to be focused on cooking with mushrooms and how to use mushrooms for food and also get the health benefits and the immunological benefits. So here are some, I would say these are pretty much the top cultivated mushrooms that you can see. I don't know if you've been to Monterey Market in Berkeley. They have the best display really of edible mushrooms that are fresh of any place I've seen. And then there's also Far West Fungi, which is it has a stand in the Embarcadero, and also the Berkeley Bowl. So those are places, though the first two really have the widest variety of cultivated mushrooms I've ever seen in a store. So, and it's a real treat to go there. So the button mushroom, shiitake, oyster mushroom, maitake, the clamshell mushroom, also called the brown beech, or shimeji, either brown or white, king oyster, wood ear, muir, enoki, tea tree mushrooms, chicken leg mushrooms, and straw mushrooms. So these are some of the most widely cultivated mushrooms that have medicinal qualities, all of them. Here are the ones that are most often cooked, I would say, that have strong immunological activity. Of course, the oyster, Maitake, Shiitake, the split gill is, we don't eat the split gill as much here in the US, Schizophyllum communis, but I will talk about it coming up and show you some pictures and recipes, because split gill, we should be eating it more and growing it more. It really is a tasty mushroom. It's very chewy and delicious, I find. I eat it. And it's widely used in Indonesia and throughout Asia as a food, as a favorite food, in stir fries, in soups, and and loaves, and so forth, and provides a lot of protein and a lot of immunological benefits and anti-cancer benefits. Wood ear, or any of these similar mushrooms that I'm going to talk about. Also, witch's butter, lion's mane, and there are more. So what are the best ways to cook mushrooms for medicinal benefits? Probably many of you know all these and practice many of them. Just to have it in one place here. Stir fries, those certainly are my favorite way of easily cooking mushrooms. And soups, I do a lot of soups and stir fries. Occasionally I grill, especially really soggy mushrooms are good grilled, certainly. And baking mushrooms, like occasionally stuffing them and baking them. Cooking and blending. Now, cooking and blending is something that I do regularly, and I produce a mushroom powder. I'll show you how to do that. I've got a slide on it. And by the way, my website, christopherhobbs.com, you can get all kinds of handouts. You can get articles on medicinal mushrooms and more. You can also get a handout that tells how to make the mushroom powder at home. My book has all of this, so you can also just pick up my book when it comes out. Shish kebab, sometimes I do that. Casseroles, and so forth. And any type of cooking that you're doing, soups or grilling or stir fry, you can make these water-based extract powders of even reishi or shiitake or turkey tail, and you can add those as a secondary additive. Some beautiful mushrooms. Let's start with the honey mushroom. Certainly one of my favorite edibles are the honey mushroom. First of all, because they're so abundant. Nowadays, there's I'm sure you know the story. There's so many more pickers nowadays. I remember Phil and I were talking about when we started back in the mid 80s. Well, he started even earlier than that. But when I came to Santa Cruz in the earlier mid 80s, you could go out there and you could pick porcini or oyster mushrooms or whatever you wanted, and there wasn't that much competition at that point. But increasingly, there is a lot of competition, and now we've got certain Facebook groups that show where to pick the mushrooms and how, and people are showing off their finds with trays of porcini and so forth. So there's just a lot more pressure out there on wild mushrooms, and so honeys aren't as sought after, but they are quite delicious. They should be well cooked. They have a lot of beta-glucans in them and fiber, and I think they can cause digestive upset in some people if you don't cook them well. But when they're in this stage here, still young and tender, boy, they are good. I find them to be quite delicious, and I don't shun them at all. So here are some of the benefits of honey mushroom. They can help lower cholesterol. They have an anti-convulsant activity that has been proven in trials, in clinical studies, and is widely used in China for people that have epilepsy and tics and spasms and so forth in the body. They can help improve night vision. They can increase blood flow to the brain. That kind of sounds good, maybe, if it's not too much. To counteract nerve weakness, neurasthenia, and supposedly benefits tinnitus. This is how it's used traditionally in China. And the dose is about 6 grams as a powdered extract, which again, I'm going to show you how to make. Or you can make a tincture and you can use it. Some side effects, if you eat too much, just stick to the recommended dose and you shouldn't have any problems. There's some open trials in China. They show that it helps reduce hypertension and it benefits the nerves, helps strengthen the nerves. So they do use the mushroom in medicines, and you can doctors do prescribe it in China. And in vitro studies, it shows that they have antibacterial, antifungal properties, anti-tumor effects, can help stabilize or reduce heart rate if it's too fast, can help the blood move in the arteries, and increase coronary oxygen efficiency, which is certainly good. Let's go on to the oyster mushroom groups. So here's the delicate oyster, which you can certainly find at Monterey Market or many other markets that sell a variety of edible mushrooms. It's quite high in protein, up to at least 25% usable protein, low fat, low calorie, rich in fiber and minerals, and essential fatty acids. So how can you go wrong? And they're also delicious. They have a fair amount of beta-glucans. Here's the king oyster, Pleurotus syringii, which is definitely more firm. It's a native to the Mediterranean and regions of Europe and the Middle East, North Africa. And some studies show that king oyster extract can, or just eating it actually, can help improve insulin sensitivity, can reduce total cholesterol, triglyceride levels, and increased HDL lipoproteins, which is pretty darn good, or HDL, the good lipoprotein in the body. Here is the standard oyster mushroom, Ostreatus. It has an anti-hyperlipidemic effect, well known for that. It can, in one study they did, total cholesterol fell by 33%, but that's, you have to eat quite a bit to get that effect, but it has a very powerful cholesterol lowering effect. Also lowered LDL, which is excellent because that's the so-called bad type of cholesterol. Also triglycerides, can help lower triglycerides. It has a compound in it, mevinolin, which is a very closely related molecule to lovastatin, which is widely prescribed as a statin drug. However, it's much weaker. So you can eat lots of oyster mushrooms and you make a powder, and you're going to get a good cholesterol lowering effect, along with all the other benefits. And it's going to lower the cholesterol because of the fiber, and also because of this compound here, which interferes or slows cholesterol biosynthesis. Also has an anti-tumor effect and promotes an immune activity of natural killer cells. Clinical indications are definitely for cholesterol imbalances, 2 grams per kilogram per day. So you have to really make an extract and eat maybe an ounce of it a day. That's quite a bit of the powder, but still less amount can still give you some benefits. Lowers cancer, colon cancer risk. So not many contraindications from oyster mushroom. Now here's Maitake, certainly one of the most delicious mushrooms, and it's a pity that it doesn't grow in the wild out here in the West. I've hunted Maitake on the East Coast, as maybe a number of you have, and it is glorious to find a big Maitake on the bottom of a maple or beech or something. They are just amazing to find and delicious. Here are some of the benefits. Again, it can help lower cholesterol. It can have a beneficial effect on hypertension, help prevent cancer, especially bladder cancer. There have been some studies. Help benefit the liver, and also reduce your risk of non-insulin dependent diabetes and blood sugar imbalances. The therapeutic dose is about 2 grams of the mushroom powder 3 times daily. That's quite a bit, but again, if you can make the powder, it's very convenient to take, and you can just eat the fruiting bodies and still get some good benefits. Now let's move on to wood ear, Muir. You might recognize this. It doesn't grow in our area. I've never seen it anyway, but it is a fantastic fungi that is so highly revered in Asia, throughout Asia. And you might have, if you, you'll see quite a bit on the shelf of bags with these interesting looking mushrooms. This is dried Muir. It's, you have to rehydrate it, obviously. So you put it into water and then it rehydrates, and you can put it in soups. You can cut it up and stir fry with it. I love it. When I was in China, I lived in China for a while, and I was studying acupuncture and Chinese medicine at a hospital. And I would always go into the local restaurant and ask for wood ear and also Muir here. And I would ask, my teacher wrote out in Chinese, please add more wood ear, because I loved it so much. So I would eat soups with it and stir fries, and would get lots of wood ear. The different types of wood ear they usually put in, they'll put in this a lot of time, the Muir, but also other ones, which I'll show you in a minute. So some of the beneficial effects are that it contains this interesting molecule, glucoronoxylomannan. So a mannan is a sugar, so it's a type of sugar. So this is a sugar polymer. This is difficult to say here. Xylomannan, so it's a glucoronoxylomannan, that was better. But it's in China, it's been studied and found to have an anti-clotting action. So if you're prone to abnormal clotting, instead of taking warfarin, people actually in China make a regular diet of wood ear, and they can actually get a beneficial effect of just opening up the blood vessels, and the blood flows more freely. Also, it's been studied in China for alleviating the side effects of radiotherapy that's used in cancer, and it's widely used as an anti-aging supplement, and has over 40 Chinese patents citing it during the 1990s alone. So this is widely known throughout Asia and in Chinese culture as one of the cultural treasures, mushroom cultural treasure, that is widely used by almost everybody in their diet for the beneficial health effects, and also just because they love the taste. Here is Muir, Auricula judy, or Auricula. Now a new species has been named in Asia, Auricula, which is found to be genetically different than other wood ears that we might have here. It's Auricularia Muir. If you go into Chinese markets, you'll see bags of these dried wood ears, and one side is white like this, and the other side is dark because of the trichomes, or the hairs that are on the mushroom. Here's one that's a little older, kind of yellowish on one side, dark on the other side. You'll see bags and bags and bags of these. So these are so widely used in China again. They're used to quell excessive menstrual flow and benefit hemorrhoids as a tea or just eating the food. Used as an iron tonic in China and to improve blood circulation again, to improve skin tone. Reduces, if you make a salve out of it, boiling it up and blending it and mixing it and making a cream or a salve, which the formula and instructions is in my book, they use it on externally for reducing skin pigmentation, and also you can consume it, and that helps as well. You have to be careful with it if you are on anticoagulants like warfarin. I would disclose it to your physician in that case. Now here is a traditional recipe. It's a lot of text. Again, you can get, I'll just mention some of the highlights. You can get you can copy it off of the web, or you can probably find it, or you can just type in high mu air recipe or traditional recipe, and I'll bet you can find it on the web. But also it's on the PowerPoint, so you can look at it on Dropbox. So in this recipe, they use a pork bone or spare ribs, or you could also use fish, or I would use tofu because I don't eat meat particularly except sardines. So, and then they add 100 grams of dried high muir, soak in warm water overnight. Then you cut up the carrots, you add some jujube dates, which are Chinese red dates. Those are really sweet and really tasty, and they also strengthen your digestion and your ability to digest well. You throw in some figs, maybe some dried figs if you want to. You can add some chestnuts in the wintertime. All these things are optional. You can mix or match. And then you put it in 2.5 liters of water, and then you cook it up. Here are the exact instructions here. And then you boil for 15 minutes, skimming the surface if there's foam from the pork. Reduced heat to low medium, cover the pot and simmer for 2.5 hours. Yield about 1 liter of soup. And it's eaten as an anti-aging soup, and also can be walked after soaking overnight and cut into 1-inch squares. So you could, high muir, you could either make a soup or again, a stir fry. And you cook it, if you're making a stir fry, you cook it with bean paste, soy sauce, cornstarch, water, and an optional amount of sugar, or if you want to add other vegetables. Here's the cloudier fungus, another type of muir, which is Auricularia nigricans, or it used to be called Auricularia polytricha. Here it is here. I've seen it once in California. You don't see it very much, but it's found in many other places. It was growing abundantly in South America. In England, I saw abundant quantities. In Europe, different places it grows abundantly. Needs a lot of rain. And here is, so it's been featured in Chinese cooking 6th to 6th century, Common Era. So you soak the dried fungus at least 15 minutes before using. And in China, it's used to help balance cholesterol, improve blood flow, again, and some of the things that many of the other wood ears are used for. And I love the crunchy flavor, the texture, and not much flavor, a little flavor, but I love the texture in a soup or stir fry. Here is one of my favorite soups. It's black fungus, or you can use any of the wood ears, cabbage soup, black fungus cabbage soup. Use any type of muir. I love this soup and I make it frequently. I add different vegetables. Sometimes I also chop kale very finely and add the kale in there if I want greens. It's a very simple and delicious recipe. So it only takes really about 15 minutes to cook if you use this recipe. So you chop the garlic, or you can add onion. You can use 1 fish cake or bonita flakes. If you go into an Asian store again, like Ranch 99 or whatever it's called, then you can get some bonito flakes, and you just put the bonito flakes in there to get kind of a fish flavor. You can skip it if you want. And you can also put tofu in instead of the fish cake. And then the cabbage you put in there, maybe a quarter cabbage, half cabbage, chop it up into the size you like. Add a handful of black fungus already soaked and washed. Half a small bowl of chicken or pork stock. Chicken stock, or I use vegetable stock, but you can use chicken stock. There's this really boiled down vegetable broth that you can get. You can put a tablespoon of that in. It tastes pretty strong. And then add your salt and other seasonings, whatever you like. And you braise for about 10 minutes, the obviously like in the fish cake and cabbage and so forth, till it's tender. And then depends, your timing has to be right. And the cabbage and black fungus can be thrown in for a short stir before you put in the chicken stock and so forth. And so just adjust your timing for how tender you like it. And then let it braise for 10 minutes, let's say that up there, covered, and then add your salt at the end to the taste. And so then you can make a very quick soup here, and a cabbage and mushroom wood ear. And I love it. I cook it frequently, and I eat it maybe at least once every week or two. Now here's a salad that you can make from wood ear. It sounds maybe a little weird. I also eat this one. I like it quite a bit. So you soak your dried wood ears and chop them up to your favorite size. You can add edamame, cilantro, garlic if you want cloves of garlic very finely minced, or onion. You can add chilies of various types depending on how hot you want it. I cook a lot. I mean, I grow a lot of peppers, and I have them frozen too. So I usually add peppers, scallions, and then you toss it with rice vinegar, canola oil, or olive oil, whatever type of oil you like, some soy sauce, and a half teaspoon of toasted sesame oil. And then just toss all that up. And that is really, you can see it looks quite good. Okay, the wood ear benefits, I've already talked about it, but here's some other ones. Moves the blood, this comes right from traditional Chinese medicine. Moves the blood, stops pain, increases physical and mental energy, slows excessive uterine bleeding, eases abdominal pain, eases low back pain, debility after childbirth, helps reduce muscle spasms, helps counteract poor circulation. And also it's widely used for lungs. And if you have a lot of phlegm, so it can clear phlegm and strengthen the lungs. So it sounds almost like a panacea, doesn't it? But these are all the things that is traditionally used for in China, and frequently used, I would say. Here's witch's butter. I'm sure you've seen witch's butter out there in the woods. There are a couple different species around the Bay Area. Tremella aurantia. Mesenterica is up further north and in other places in the country. Dacromyces chrysospermus, that one typically grows on conifers. I've seen it, especially after a big rain, you see them just pop out on pines and so forth. These typically grow on oaks in our area. Sometimes you do get massive fruitings after rains. I like them. I eat them raw. I tend to eat some of them raw, but I dry them and rehydrate and put in soups and stir fries. They are widely used. So it's a great food source. It has lots of beta-glucans in it, so it's immunomodulating. Cholesterol lowering, benefits the lungs and helps soothe the lungs if you have an infection or something. And it's well known that it can inhibit Helicobacter pylori, bacteria that resides in the stomach of most of us and has been associated with a higher risk of gastritis and stomach ulcers. So using it regularly, you can actually help balance this could be pesky bacteria if it's overgrowing in your stomach. Hypoglycemic effect can help lower blood sugar and again activate an immune response. So here are some fungi that you might not think too much of. You might just pass them by, but give them a try. It's still not too late. I found some of both types of witch's butter just this last week. I've been finding them. Shiitake, it's the fragrant mushroom. Very, very highly researched for anti-cancer, immune activating, cholesterol lowering, helps the body fight infection, and it's delicious any way you cook it. I have shiitake sometimes 4 or 5 times a week. I can't get enough shiitake. I love it. And of course other species in there, but I really do love shiitake. Here are some of the biological effects: immunomodulating, anti-tumor, antiviral, protects your liver, reduces cholesterol, and helps prevent ulcers. Many, many clinical trials. I'm not really going to go into any of them. I'm only going to summarize saying that there are numerous Chinese, Japanese clinical trials with a substance called Lentinus adodes mycelium extract, or LEM. This is just a crude extract of shiitake high in beta-glucans that has been used in clinical studies and in practice in Japan and in China for benefiting people with cancer that are on chemotherapy. It can increase the 5-year survival rate, even up to 30% higher with people that are getting LEM over people that are just getting the placebo plus radiation. Has a good anti-tumor effect, increases survival time again. And it's been studied for inoperable gastric cancer and breast cancer. And this is another compound from shiitake called lentinan. So very widely revered in, of course, throughout Asia. Can benefit people with hepatitis C and B, benefit your liver. Cholesterol, again, chronic fatigue, viral syndromes, immune suppression, infectious diseases. So just adding shiitake to your diet can really help benefit some of these issues. So here's the split gill. How's our time doing here? 8:30. We have a little more time, I guess.
Okay, you can talk.
So split gill is a fascinating mushroom. Here you see a plate of it, a platter of it. And it's widely cultivated in Southeast Asia and Asia. It's also a traditional food in Mexico. I've seen pretty massive fruitings of it in Santa Cruz. Davis, I've seen, strangely, in Davis, I've seen really massive fruitings on alder. So, and I actually have seen it on alder in Santa Cruz as well. So look for it on dying or dead alders in the Bay Area. And sometimes you do get very massive fruitings. It's pounded. They tend to pound it and tenderize it, so to make it more tender. And you can add fish sauce to it, or bonito flakes and a little water and pound it, and tamari, and just pound that up, and then use it in stir fries or even soups. And it's very widely studied for medicine. Here is how you pick Schizophilum. This comes from someone that lives in Southeast Asia. They call it the tiny oyster mushroom. It's got, looks like gills on the bottom, but it's really not gills. It's pseudo gills, I guess. I've got a really great picture of it in here, if I can quickly find it. In my book that they put in here. It's really a great photo. Here it is. So you can see that it looks like gills, but it's actually these ridges or pseudogills split down the middle when the spores are when it's mature and then the spores are being shed. You can actually see where they're shed from, that split. So that's why they're called schizophylum or split gill. So they call it the tiny oyster. So when you wake up in the morning after a big rain and you hand pick it, and they call it jamur griget, jamur griget. And so then you sun dry it for later use. You rehydrate it overnight in the fridge, discard the debris, and drain the mushrooms well. Then, or you can use the soaking liquid, which can be used to give it extra flavor. And you can make a vegan meal just by pounding the mushrooms until they are shredded to a fleshy meat texture, and then mix them well with flour. And the dish is then called Kang Layan Pak Nam, and it's cooked in India and also Southeast Asia. Very famous dish. And here is another dish that you see here is the cooked split gills. By the way, you can buy the spawn if you want to grow it, and you can also get blocks that will sprout out with Schizophylum communi. You can, I think, probably that Far West Fungi has them. So jamur griget is considered a delicacy because it's got a meaty texture with earthy and pleasant aromas. Western cultures consider it inedible due to differing standards of taste rather than known toxicity. Split-gill mushroom, in fact, is edible and widely consumed in Mexico, India, Indonesia, and elsewhere in the tropics and also in China. So the rest of the world's eating it, and we're kind of dissing it. We're kind of ignoring it. Here it is being cultivated. And here's some split gill curry. If you want to try some split gill curry, there it is. It's quite good. But boy, look at all that split gill there. So you can see how just one of those, and you can grow them. I show how to grow in poly tubes, how to inoculate, how to prepare the substrate, the straw or wood or chips or whatever. I show you how to do that step by step in my book, and how to just inoculate it with your split gill spawn, and you can grow your own. Here is a loaf called Kang Layan Pak Nam. It's pan roasted split gill mushroom loaf, and it's so you pound the split gill and you mix it with vegetables and maybe even other mushrooms if you want, and with herbs, with a variety of different herbs. You can use any herbs you like, and then it's served on banana leaves or turmeric leaves, which are wide and kind of aromatic. The turmeric certainly is. And it's a dish that's widely eaten when people are young, during childhood. And with this, you can also use other mushrooms. Here is a link to the original recipe and the instructions and video. Here is the ingredient. Here are the ingredients: half cup of dried split gill mushroom, shrimp, chives, onion, fermented fish, chilies, turmeric leaves, and salt to taste. So ginger. So you're seeing how to what ingredients are, and then if you want to make the loaf, then you can go to this link here, and I'll show you how to make it. So here's some more. It's some medicinal effects. They use it in Malaysia and the Philippines for counteracting seizure disorders. It has anti-tumor. It restores natural killer cell activity. It increases our resistance to bacterial infection, and they use it. It shows protection against chemotherapy. It's also a great source of this compound called beta-bisabolol, which is also found in chamomile. And it's used externally in cosmetics, and it's absorbed through the dermis. So you can make a cream or a salve out of split gill, and you can use it on your skin to help heal wounds and to help reduce inflammation of a rash and so forth. It also has a strong antifungal activity and has an anti-inflammatory activity. So pretty interesting. And they do use it as a paste for skin, as a skin preparation in Southeast Asia. Here are some trials, better 5-year survival rates with stage 2 cervical cancer when given with radiation. And clinical indications, gasps, and pretty much a repeat. So let's go on to lion's mane. Lion's mane is certainly one of the most sought after mushrooms right now, I would say. You don't see them that commonly, but typically every season I find a beautiful lion's mane. I know certain areas where they grow. They certainly are beautiful. They are incredibly tasty if you've eaten them. You can buy them, small ones that are cultivated at Shopper's Corner in Santa Cruz, but in other places. It's getting a lot of attention right now because there are some clinical trials showing that it has memory enhancing effects. It has compounds which are called diterpenes that have memory enhancing effects that can be used as a nerve tonic to activate nerve growth and repair. And there's a small study that shows mood enhancing effects. And also it's incredibly delicious. So here are some other things that it's been studied for. It's been shown to have antibiotic, anti-cancer, anti-diabetic, anti-fatigue, hypertensive, hypolipidemic, senescence, so against aging, cardioprotective, hepatoprotective, nephroprotective. It also stimulates nerve growth factor to help regenerate nerves, and that's why it's gathering so much attention right now. And there are also clinical trials on mood disorders, which I show you in the next slide, and it can help with cognitive function and depression. This mushroom is literally likely the most popular mushroom in all of Asia. You find it everywhere. Go into any Chinese market and you will see shelf after shelf of bags full of cultivated lion's mane dried fruiting bodies. And they soak it and then they cook with it, soups, stir fries, whatever. And they eat it frequently. Like it's almost like a daily thing that they eat to get the protein, to get the immune effects, to get the anti-inflammatory effects, the nerve benefiting effects, the mood regulating effects. That's probably why it is so incredibly popular throughout Asia. And again, you see it in every market. So for nerve repair, it's only in vivo and studies in human cell lines, but they have shown that it can stimulate the growth and repair of nerve cells. Here is an excellent review article if you want to read it. There are 2 clinical trials. One 50 to 80-year-old men with mild cognitive impairment. They studied, again, 30 people for 16 weeks. The dose was 1 gram a day of powdered fruiting body. They found that cognitive function increased significantly over placebo using a standard measurement scale. There's another study that showed reduction of depression and anxiety in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study with 30 women with depression and anxiety. They found that it was helpful. Verum group, in other words, the group getting the lion's mane versus, placebo, had significantly better scores, and here is the article. Here are the best non-edibles to cook, so-called non-edibles, certainly turkey tails, because they are so high in beta-glucans. So what you want to do is you want to freeze them for after picking And you know, some years you just get so many fruiting bodies, but always leave some. Don't pick them all. Always leave some, like leave half. You're seeing a big log full of them. They're easy to pull off, pull them down and get the fruiting bodies off, but always leave half so that they can keep doing their job, recycling the carbon in the forest. So you freeze the sporocarps for 2 to 3 days, because if you don't, if you dry them, they're just going to be they're going to be powder within a month or so. Try to put them in a jar and store them because of the fly eggs that are in there that will hatch out, and they'll eat up your your mushroom. So then simmer to make a broth. So you just boil, simmer, or you can put it in a pressure cooker and just simmer it. If you simmer it all up, you can either just filter out the broth, the mushroom flavored broth that has beta-glucans in it, or even more powerful, you can, once you cook it and maybe put it in a pressure cooker for, again, 15 minutes to 30 minutes, let it cool down. Then let it cool down a little bit, and then put it in your blender and blend it up until it's creamy, until you blend it up, all of that cooked mushroom or turkey tails. And it's really a nice tasting, thick broth that it makes. It's a little gelatin, some gel in there, and you're getting all of those incredible beta-glucans. And then you go ahead and you make soups with that, or you can go ahead and dry it in a food dehydrator and make a dried powder that you can add to soups or stir fries or whatever. Or you can make a drink out of it and make an instant tea. So you could either discard the marc, the cooked portion, or you can blend it up. I much prefer, and I recommend blending it up, because you're going to get so much more out of it. The artist conk, can make tea as a coffee substitute, dark and strong. After you, the artist conk is another mushroom. It's Ganoderma brownii or applanatum. If you cut it up when it's tender and fresh, then you can boil it, either dry it or boil it, and just make a kind of a mushroom coffee out of it. It's dark and strong and bitter, and it has immunomodulating effects. I don't know if you've ever consumed or thought about getting an artist conk and cutting it up and drying it and then boiling it to make a strong coffee-like drink, but you can, and it's not that bad tasting. It's quite bitter. Here's the medicinal mushroom soup that I often make. This is my most common recipe. First, there's 2 parts to it. First of all, you put stuff in the Instapot. If you want a bean soup, a bean medicinal mushroom soup like lentils, first you put the lentils in, and you put the turkey tails in, for instance. You put plenty of water in there, like half an Instant Pot. You put the top on, put it on high, turn it on for 30 minutes until the mushroom is broken down and the lentils will be completely broken down. Then you go ahead and do a stir fry. You can put all your vegetables and everything else, onions and whatever, right in the Instant Pot and then make your soup that way, and seasoning. It works, but if you want more flavor, more rich flavor, then I do a stir fry, and I put in onions, sliced onions and peppers and tomatoes if I have them, and garlic. And I've oftentimes put in finely chopped kale. You can put asparagus in there, as you're seeing here. You can also, if you grow bean sprouts, you can put bean sprouts in there. And then you go ahead and stir fry those. But when you're stir frying them, put the lid on, put maybe some water in there, like a 1/4 cup of water, put the lid on, put the oil in there, say a tablespoon of olive oil, and you kind of stir fry and steam them at the same time until they're tender. So I lift the top off and move it around, put my spices in there. Like I often use curry spices. I often use paprika, I like a lot, and chilies. So those are the 2 that I use a lot. And then put the top back on. When it's all tender and done, you just go ahead and just pour that right into your soup, your Instant Pot that has the broken down lentils or beans and the turkey tails. And then you're just going to heat it up basically and let it sit for a half hour, and it's done. And that makes an absolutely delicious soup that has so much potential health healing benefits that I make it frequently. I make it usually once a week, and I freeze some and I eat on it sometimes for a couple of days. And this is really one of the mainstays of my diet. And I modify it depending on what vegetables are. You can also put squash, pieces of cut up squash like kabocha squash or any other type of squash. Oftentimes I'll slice up yams and cube the yams and put the yams in and cook those a little bit till they're tender. So there's different ways that you can do it, but this is my basic turkey tail medicinal mushroom soup, you might say. Here it is here with some moor in it, maybe some greens in there. This gives more details. Again, but I pretty much mentioned how to do it. And now cordyceps. Cordyceps is not something that you're going to think of eating, I'm sure. In China and Asia, many people do eat cordyceps mushrooms, though. It's a caterpillar, the moon moth caterpillar, ghost moth caterpillar, and then the fungus attacks it and consumes, the mycelium consume the caterpillar and then produces these fruiting bodies here that look like a club coming out of the top of the caterpillar's head. Then they're dried. These things are more valuable than gold now. They are incredibly valuable because they're a cultural treasure in Tibet and China. And they're not that common, and they have to be handpicked one by one in the Tibetan highlands, up high up in the mountains. Whole families look for them. And so they're incredibly valuable and very costly. Because of that, and because they haven't been able to figure out very well how to cultivate these wild cordyceps that are so widely revered for increasing sexual potency, counteracting fatigue, increasing your vitality, performance, like we're doing sports. It's thought to be, a superfood basically for energy and sexual vitality. That's why it is so highly revered. But because it's so expensive and because many Westerners do not like the idea of eating caterpillars, now we have an option. We have Cordyceps militaris, which does grow on caterpillars, insect larvae, and here it is here. It grows in the southeastern United States. You can find it. But it also can be cultivated. So it's widely cultivated on cooked brown rice. And if you grow it just right, and you put just the right additives in there, not insects, you can get it to produce thick amount of fruiting bodies. I should have a picture here, but you can grow masses of fruiting bodies. So here are the fruiting bodies that you can buy, and you can add to soups or stir fries or whatever, and they're very tasty actually. Or you can make the mushroom powder that I talked about. So Cordyceps militaris. So if you want to try cordyceps, never buy a product that says cordyceps on it, and you look on the back and it says cordyceps, or the newer name, Ophiocordyceps sinensis. Don't buy those products because they are not Ophiocordyceps sinensis. They are some other species. What you want to buy is a cordyceps product. It might say cordyceps on the front, but on the back, it's going to say Cordyceps militaris. Then you know that it is at least what it says it is. I've done a lot of research on this. So I'm not going to go into great detail here. This is basically just what I was saying. You'll see other species such as Cordymax or CS4. Now, sometimes you'll pick up a bottle of cordyceps and it'll say CS4 on it. That is a strain that is widely cultivated and widely used, and especially for protecting the kidneys, Cordyceps CS4 has actual clinical trials showing that it helps protect the kidneys. So if you're taking a medication, if you have kidney problems, this is the supplement for you, is Cordymax or Cordyceps CS4, because there are clinical trials showing that it helps protect your kidneys. Here are some other clinical indications. Again, people that are recovering from illness, anti-aging effect, immunosuppression. It's very well known for counteracting asthma and bronchial and lung inflammation as an adjuvant for treating cancer, but the other ones are better for that. Turkey tail reishi is better than for that. But here is nephritis, nephrotoxicity. It has clinical trials. And nephrotoxicity in elderly patients that are on certain types of meds are very hard on the kidneys. So here's Cordyceps linguini. If you want to be daring and you want to try some Cordyceps militaris, which you can buy them in packets, maybe dried, and I think you can probably buy them from Far West Fungi. So 2 ounces of fresh Cordyceps militaris or soaked, 3 ounces of dried high quality linguine or other pasta, 1 tablespoon toasted breadcrumbs for the top, 2 tablespoons extra virgin olive oil for finishing, a large shallot cut in half, then julienne, sliced chives, maybe some dry white wine, kosher salt and pepper to taste, a good handful of fresh watercress trimmed into 1 to 2 inch pieces, and some dried pepper flakes, optional to taste. So this is a recipe that is quite delicious if you want to try some Cordyceps militaris with pasta. And here is where the recipe came, and you can check it out, foragerchef.com. Now, making the dry, a few more slides, and then we're finished for questions if you have any. Making a dry tea extract. You put the mushrooms, like turkey tails, reishi, you boil them in a pot with plenty of water until you reduce the water down to like literally 1/10 of what you started with. So you're going to cook the mushrooms well. Or if you use a pressure cooker, you just break down the mushrooms like turkey tails or reishi, whatever. Other mushrooms can be used too. You just break them down in a pressure cooker. And then you're going to either strain and reduce the tea down even more till it's really thick, or you're going to leave the mark in there. So you're just going to take, like we did, I told you before, you take the turkey tails that have been well cooked with just a little water left after boiling it down, you put it in your blender, you blend it all up, and then you go ahead and it should be pretty thick at that point. And then you go ahead and you pour onto your fruit leather trays of a food dehydrator. Here it is right here. So you go ahead and you pour it into your fruit leather trays, then you dehydrate it and get a wafer. It's going to be a kind of a solid wafer. It's basically mushroom leather. Then you're going to take that once it's dried and make a powder out of it. Store the powder in an airtight jar, and then you can pour that. You can take a tablespoon or a teaspoon at a time, put it into soups, sprinkle it into a stir fry to use it. And it's going to, or even make an instant tea by putting 1/2 teaspoon into a cup of hot water and drinking it. You can add other herbs like ginger or licorice to make it taste better. This is going to give you a real immune boost because it has all those beta-glucans of the reishi or of the turkey tail. And again, on my book, I completely detail how to make it and show pictures step by step. Now, if you buy a mushroom product, say you wanted to buy a lion's mane product in capsules, there are a number of brands that you can get if you go into your local health food market, and you'll see these beautiful pictures of lion's mane or whatever, and you buy a bottle of capsules. Well, what's in those capsules? it is going to be mainly, oftentimes, I'm not saying completely, but many times it's going to be mostly starch. Because what the growers do is they take brown rice and cook it, pack it into poly bags, inoculate it with a mycelium, say lion's mane. They're going to let the mycelium grow out and eat some of the brown rice, but not all. They only give it a few weeks, maybe a month. So it's not completely digested. Then they harvest the block, they dry it and powder it and put it into the capsules. So the problem with that is, you might be getting some fruiting bodies in there, because if you let the mycelium grow on the cooked brown rice long enough, it's going to start producing fruiting bodies. Yes, you can grow fruiting bodies on cooked brown rice, but you have to really let it go for a long time. And not every company does that. So how can you tell whether your product has got starch in it or not, or glycogen, which is basically what mushrooms do with starch? They digest it, gobble it up, and then they store it because they need glycogen for quick energy when they fruit. But glycogen is not hardly at all immunoactive, and starch is not immunoactive at all. You're not getting any benefit out of starch for what you're buying. So what you do is you get a bottle of iodine solution. You can easily get it on Amazon or wherever, your local pharmacy. You put a couple capsules of the powder in a glass of water. You stir it. It's going to be lightly amber like this. And you go ahead and you put a dropper full of the iodine solution in there. Now, this is a standard starch test. If it's got starch in it, it's going to turn bright blue. If it's got glycogen in it, which means the mushroom mycelium had a lot of starch to consume, it consumed it all and stored it as glycogen. So this is maybe slightly better than if it's just blue like this. But frankly, if it's blue and it stays blue, your product has got a significant amount of starch. Could be up to 80% starch. Likely 30 to 80% starch. And if you pay $30 a bottle, then it's not worth it. So there are some companies that sell bags of mycelium powder, which are a lot better. And one company is Mushroom Harvest. That's one company that I know. I act as a consultant for them, that I trust and I know have fruiting bodies in there, and they let the mycelium consume the rice so that you don't get these high levels of starch. So thanks for watching. I'll see if there's any questions, but check my website out, which is christopherhobbs.com. And again, this slideshow can be viewed here. And if Phil can text everybody or get the link out, then you can watch it again.
Yeah, I'll send it when we stop here.
Okay, well, I'm done for now. That's all for the presentation, but I'll take any questions if you have them.
Gotta be a few. Justin? No.
Nothing? Holy spitball.
No way.
I have a question.
Have a question. Oh, Barbara.
Yeah, you mentioned to use a pressure cooker. Would it just be all right to cook longer on a pot?
Yeah, you don't need a pressure cooker. You can just boil them for an hour or two, and you just simmer it down. You start with say 2/3 of a pot of water. Put the turkey tails in there. Cut them up a bit if you want. It's actually maybe a little, doesn't matter. And then just start cooking until it's reduced down to about 1/10 of the original volume. Then let it cool a little bit and then blend it up until.
Then blend it in a blender.
Blend it in a blender.
Okay. And then the other thing, when I'm reconstituting dried shiitakes, for example, or whatever, boletes. I just stick them in water and put them in the microwave. Am I destroying anything, or is that okay?
That's okay. Yes, the beta-glucans are very sturdy. They're very, you're not going to break those down very much.
Okay,
Probably a little bit, but it doesn't matter. The pieces are also active. The phenolics, the terpenes, those are all pretty stable compounds.
great.
You might, if you know, when we're cooking them real high heat, you could lose some of the B vitamins. But otherwise, the other compounds are really going to be pretty solid.
Okay, and then a lot of times when I've had dried mushrooms for a long time, in pieces, I'll just grind them up in the coffee grinder and throw them into broth or soup or anything. Is that okay, or should I
Yeah,
be
sure.
cooking?
Sure. I mean, they have to be cooked to soften them up to gain access to the active compounds and the nutrition, but
Uh-huh.
and also prevent any irritation in the gut. That's why we don't eat raw mushrooms as much. But yeah, if they're powdered form, like in a coffee grinder, I do the same thing.
Oh,
Just
good.
put some mushrooms in there when they're dry and powder them up and just add it to soups. Sure, that works
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I just keep it in a shaker by the oven. It's
Yeah,
very
excellent.
handy. And it's so good.
Good.
Yum, yum. Thank you.
Yeah. Any others? Okay, that means I did a good job of explaining everything, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
So, all right, well, my
Christopher, thank
pleasure
you so
again
much.
to be with you, and hope we meet on the mushroom trail out there somewhere.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Christopher, we'll be back to you.
Okay, all right. Good
All
to
right.
see you, Bill, as always.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have a good evening.
Yeah.
all right, you as
Awesome.
well.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Guys,
Good, everybody.
Thank you.
thanks for
Thank you,
coming.
Chris.
Email the thing to.
I will.
Leave. How did I do that? Leave.
Wow, they clear out pretty quick.
yep, they're clearing off. I mean,
Bye.